Hey there, you're right. So my pen didn't work before, so we're now doing the example B, how to divide decimals especially when you get a zero point zero 0.03 as an example over here. You've got 64.137 and you're dividing this by 0.03. So the problem is that we don't know our 0.03 times tables. We know it when it's nice whole numbers like the one we see over here. See, that's 4. We know our 4 times tables. That's why we can do the division much easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this into a fraction, okay, so that you can see the logic to why this works. Okay, so 64.137 divided by 0.03. Now this is going to be slightly different to multiplication, the way you learned for multiplication. So here we go. Let's have a look. I'm going to say, so the only way that I'm comfortable is if this was a nice whole number. What we can do is we can force this, because this is a fraction, we know it's essentially, we can use equivalent fractions to try to convert it to something that we can work with. And what I mean by that is, well, 0.03, what would I need to multiply to make it a nice whole number? Well, I know that I need to change that 3, which is currently a hundredths column. How many more spaces do I need to get it into the units column? Well, hundredths column, I needed to move 2 spaces. So that tells me that if I multiply 0.03 by 100, that will give me, my next fraction now is 3 in the denominator. But remember, in equivalent fractions, whatever you do to the bottom, you also need to do to the top. That way you keep it the same. It hasn't changed, right? So if I times the bottom by 100, I need to also multiply the numerator, which is the top, by 100 as well. So that means I will now get, if I times it by 100, that will give me 64, no longer 64, it's now 6,413.7. Okay, so the hundreds column, the tens column, 6 in the tens, moving 2 place values forward, makes it in the thousands column. Now this is something we can work with. Okay, that brings it back to something similar in example A. So now I can say, oh, well, let's use our 3 times tables and let's work this one out. I know I need to find out how many 3's fit into 6,413.7. And this is where I can say, okay, well, 3 goes into 6 twice. That's how many times 3 goes into 6. Okay, it goes twice. I'm just going to change the color. And then how many 3 goes into 4? Well, 0 times. So then I take the next column and I say, well, what about 4 and the 1? That makes it 401, but essentially I'm just looking at 41. So how many 3's fit into 41? We know that it fits in, what am I talking about? Of course 3 fits into 4. 3 fits into 4 once, and remainder 1, so fits in once, remainder 1. 3 fits into 11. We know that 3 fits into 11 3 times, remainder 2, because 3 times 3 is 9. And so 9 away from 11 was 2 units. So that's why I'm carrying the 2 over to the next column. Now, how many 3's fit into 23? I know it fits in 7 times. Okay, so 3 times 7 is 21. So I've got another remainder of 2. Remember, don't forget the decimal point. Carry the 2 over to the next column. How many 3's fit into 27? Fits in 9 times. That's why I know the answer is 2,137.9. Okay, now notice the difference here. Unlike multiplication, you normally have to change the answer at the end in multiplication, right? Not in division. Why? Because in division, you've already kept everything the same. You times it by 100 on the top, you times the bottom by 100. These two are equivalent. 64.137 divided by 0.03 is the same thing as saying 6,413.7 divided by 3. That's why you don't have to do any more or anything else, because both equations are the same. Whereas over here in multiplication, it was not the same when you say 4.13 times 9.6. It's not the same as 413 times 96. They're two totally different numbers. That's why you can't just leave your answer as 39,648. You actually then had to do the final division there. Okay, so that's the difference between multiplication of decimals and division of decimals, which I find that students tend to mix up. Okay, if you understand why it works, then you're less likely to make that mistake. Okay.